How's it going, YouTube? Tyler the hotshot hauler here. Let's talk about insurance. So, as a hotshotter, your insurance is going to be your biggest recurring expense besides fuel. And I want to talk to you about your options, some heavy mistakes I made, some headaches that I caused myself, to maybe simplify the process for you and to make your life easier, so when you choose to do this, it'll save you headache. Don't do what I did for a lot of this, all right? So first off, let's talk about your insurance providers. Your options are Progressive, and any sketchy third-party company that wants to try to sell you insurance on social media. My advice, stay away from that. Don't even bother. I mean, if you're going to call around to any other company, Allstate, whoever you want to call around to, the first question you need to ask them is, do you outsource your insurance through Progressive? If they say yes, just say, okay, no thank you. Because what they're going to do is Progressive is going to sell them a policy for the same price they're going to sell you a policy if you go directly, and then they are going to charge the company, let's say you use Allstate just as an example, they are going to charge you a fee to manage that policy of, like, let's say $1,000. So you're paying $1,000 more for your policy, but you would just get direct through Progressive. Okay? So I'll save you that headache. Just go to Progressive. The other reason why is because Progressive is the only one that I found where you can do your entire quote online. You don't have to call anybody. You can do all your coverages, everything through the computer in like 10 minutes, and you got your coverage and you're out the door. Everybody else you have to call, and you have to dick around on the phone for 45 minutes while they play 100 questions with you. They ask you a bunch of questions that you're like, why does this matter? Because it doesn't ask me that on the website. And just save yourself the headache. Go with Progressive. They're going to be the cheapest one you're going to find that's like legit. I shopped around for almost 2 days, and that was 2 days wasted of my time. But now let's move on about how to properly set your policy dates and don't make mistakes like what I did, because this was something that I dealt with for about 2 months even after I went active. So my authority was supposed to go active on a Thursday, and I set my policy to start the following Monday in case there was any delays or anything with the process, and I was like, yeah, I'll just start on the next Monday. So that's what I did. I got my policy set up for the truck and trailer. Everything was good to go, cargo insurance, all that stuff. Okay. Well, what ended up happening was I had all my equipment before, and I wanted to use my gooseneck trailer to do stuff around my farm and do stuff like that. I had a bunch of cargo. I had stuff I had to do with like for completely personal use. So I called Progressive to make sure that it was covered, because everybody told me, oh yeah, it's your trailer is covered through your vehicle insurance. And I was like, okay, well, let me call to verify. You know, in the military, I learned a great expression of trust, or a great saying, I should say, of trust but verify. Trust people but verify. So I called Progressive, and the lady told me, well, it is covered for a whopping $500. So through my regular auto policy that I had before my commercial policy went active, it was only covered for $500. So I was like, okay, and I know I stated my case. I was like, well, it's property damage. As long as it doesn't exceed my limit was $100,000. How is it not covered? And she went into some long explanation, and basically she told me, long story short, just get a commercial policy for the trailer. You have to, because of the value in the trailer, yada yada yada. Just get it for a couple weeks and cancel it right before your policy goes active. No big deal. Okay. So I did that. I got a policy, to make sure that the trailer was covered. I apologize about the vibrations. Our highest quality roads are, crap. But anyways, so I got the policy, got it covered, used the trailer for a couple weeks, and the day my authority went active, I happened to receive a phone call. Like literally 30 minutes after I got my verification, it was active. I received a phone call that somebody, a person who I knew through a friend, wanted me to move some cargo, and they need for their business, and they needed it done like today. They needed it picked up like today. They lived close to me, or wherever their business was close to me, and they needed it delivered the next day to a different state. And I said, okay, my authority just went active. I said, give me an hour, let me get my insurance. I explained the situation. So I went to Progressive. I called them. I had to call them, which was kind of a pain in the ass, but I had to basically get a new policy, because I couldn't change the date of the one I had already stayed. So I had to get a new policy, and then they had to cancel out my trailer policy because they couldn't just add the vehicle to it for some reason. They said there was some type of hiccup where they couldn't do it because it was basically deemed as just a trailer coverage and not for cargo insurance. It's how they wrote the policy. It's some legal thing that I didn't understand. So I said, okay, so they started me a new policy. That day I got my policy, I went out and did the haul, got paid, everything was fine and dandy. So I went out and I canceled that policy. Like after the haul, I got home on Friday, I canceled it on Saturday. My new policy took effect Monday, and everything was fine and dandy for a month. Now, with that, let me explain a little hiccup there. So my original policy that I bought, I had to do a down payment of I think $2,000, and then the one I got last minute, I had to do a down payment of $3,000. So I had basically $5,000 already tied up in insurance. So after I canceled that policy, for that one haul, I canceled it and I got my refund. It took about a month for the refund. It was like $2,800 or something that was coming back to me. So on top of that, for any time you do a policy, you get charged fees. So, I don't know what that fee is, but how I did the math, they basically charged me basically an inconvenience fee is how I look at it, for me being a pain in the ass. I think it was like $100. So I ended up, I got my refund, and I got it about a month later. It took a long time for the refund. So everything's all fine and dandy with my policy, that my original policy. I'm doing hauls. I'm in the middle of a haul in a different state, and I get an email from Progressive that I have no insurance coverage anymore. And I was like, what the fuck? So I called them and I said, what's going on? Well, when they had to write me that policy for that short haul, the lady who did it basically messed up the policy. She didn't submit the documents, and what was supposed to happen was that policy number was basically just going to run in, and it was going to take over my old policy. Or, sorry, my current policy number is how it was supposed to be written. Well, that didn't happen. So what happened was the policy, since it was not written correctly, was technically never even active. So, but yet she sent me a certificate of insurance and all this stuff, but since anything with commercial policies takes time. It's not like car insurance where it's instant and your changes are instant. It takes a couple days for it to take effect. You're still covered and yada, 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 but it takes days for it to take effect. So by the time I got the policy to the time I canceled it, there was never enough time in there, especially since it was a weekend. There wasn't time in there for it to update in their system and my system. So basically, it's like the policy was never there, but it was. So like I said, a couple months down the road, I get a notification, hey, you have no insurance. They literally canceled out my current policy I had been using. So I called them and I'm like, what's going on? Well, when you call them, it's not like you don't know who you're talking to. I thankfully, I got some really awesome call taker. I seem to get her a lot. I know it's kind of weird, the odds of it, but it's kind of weird. She's always super helpful. I get really lucky. But I called her and I was like, she was the one who had helped me with like all my policy issues. So she kind of actually knew what was going on. I got really fortunate because every time you call in, you get someone different and they have to spend 10 minutes figuring out what's going on because on their screen, it's showing up as I have no coverage. It was a nightmare. So I called Progressive. I talked to the lady and, she had to call me back. It took her 2 hours to figure it out. She's like, I'm gonna have to call you back in a couple hours to figure this crap out. So what ended up happening was, like I said, the policy was technically never active. So they canceled out my current policy, started me a new policy, but the new policy was the policy that was never active. So they backdated that policy, those extra 4 days. So that whole time, I was basically paying on 2 insurance policies. Essentially what happened, it was this giant It was a giant error and a giant mistake that could have been prevented if I would have just been patient. The moral of this is be patient. Do it right the first time. Okay, that is what you need to pick up from this video. Be patient and don't cause yourself a headache like I did. Okay, so they were basically double charging me for 2 policies. So very, very long story short, it got all worked out, and my current policy is the policy number that I called for that emergency policy to do that short haul. After all the headaches and all the back payment, all the debt basically that we had to figure out, it took almost a month of logistic nightmares. It all got worked out, and I only had to pay an extra couple days. Basically what they did is they just charged me from the day I started that policy to now. They said, yeah, we can't do this, stop it for a couple days and restart it. So they just charged me 2 extra days. I said, that's fine. I learned a good lesson. And then, while I was running, I had learned after a couple of weeks that you need to get general liability insurance. And so they backdated that from the beginning of the policy, which kind of sucked because I wasn't even using it. But it is what it is. And I want to talk real quick about general liability insurance and the importance of it. General liability insurance is basically the insurance that covers you for basically anything against your business. So your regular insurance only covers you basically if your stuff gets stolen or if you are behind the wheel. So if you're not behind the wheel, if you're outside unloading a trailer and somebody crawls up on your trailer and they fall off and hurt themselves and they sue you, you're not covered. You are liable. So that's why I get general liability insurance, and that covers that. That is something that I didn't know. Thankfully, I didn't get sued, but I heard a story from a fellow hotshotter who voiced his concerns about how he did not get general liability insurance, and he was sued, and it actually put him out of business. So I learned a lesson from somebody else's misfortune. Get the general liability insurance, pay the money for it, because if something happens, you could be running in perfect harmony for years, and one thing can put you out of business like that you can't control. Somebody trying to screw you to get money so they can be lazy. So get that. But that sums it up, guys. Basically, since I was impatient and didn't do my insurance right the first time, I created a headache that literally lasted. But by the time it all got worked out and I got all my money back and all my payments were all worked out, basically it took so long for them to get my money back. I told them, I even tried to tell them, just throw all the money towards the policy. They couldn't even do that because there's rules and stuff. But by the time I all got refunded, it was about 60 to 90 days after everything was worked out. It was more towards about 90 days. By the time that all happened, I'm glad it's over now, but if I would have just done it right the first time and stayed patient and not got extra insurance to do a 2-day haul, I would have made itself a lot less headache. But yes, that sums it up, guys. Do it right the first time. Make sure, if you don't have Progressive, make sure that if you're going to use your trailer for stuff that's before your authority goes active, make sure you check to see like what your actual coverage is if you're using that trailer, and get all that jazz figured out, because you don't want to wait for your authority to go active and let's say some misfortune happens and you wreck that trailer, somebody hits you and it's not covered. Well, now you just dumped a bunch of money to start a business and now you have no trailer to make money. So make sure you do stuff right the first time. And I know that the price of insurance sucks, especially now, middle of 2022. I mean, hotshotters literally are dropping like flies because they can't afford to stay in business. And right now, it seems to be only like the single guy, the guys who are just themselves with one truck, or maybe even just maybe one other truck, are staying in business. Everybody else is struggling, and that's because insurance rates have gone through the roof, fuel prices are through the roof, and yeah. Do your insurance right and do it. You might have to pay more money to do stuff right and to make sure that you are covered in the unlikely event that something happens, but you are going to thank yourself in the unlikely event that does happen and you are not sued personally, or you are not sued to where you're out of business and your truck and trailer and everything's gone, or whatever, however you get sued, however you set up your business structure. Do it right the first time and make sure you cover yourself. The one thing I did want to say, you know, people want to ask, okay, how much is my first year of insurance going to cost me? Well, truly that varies, obviously, on your equipment value and your experience, if you have experience. So I had no experience. My equipment value was about, I think I listed it at $89,000, my original equipment that I did. And I had no accidents or tickets in the last 3 years, and I had no infractions, no DUIs, like nothing like that. I had a really good record. And my insurance cost with, you know, general liability, cargo insurance, everything we needed, was, I think I think it was $17,000 is what my premium was. It was under that. It was like 16 in high, so I basically just said 17. It was basically $17,000. So, with a pretty heavy, I think my down payment, I ended up, after it was all said and done, it was about $3,000. So, and then, you know, you divide the rest by the month, and yeah. So I mean, it is expensive to run, and your first year. I mean, I'm still in my first year, but you know, I've been told that after your first year, the insurance goes down. And let's hope that's the case. From what I've been seeing from other people going out of business, that doesn't seem like that is the case anymore. So hopefully when I'm up for renewal next year, hopefully I'm able to keep operating. So anyways, guys, thank you for watching. Comments, questions, anything like that, that'd be greatly, you know, I enjoy it. I enjoy the conversation. I'll respond. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. Lots of hotshot content always coming as usual, and thank you for watching.